Hi, my name is Esme Duma, and I'm doing my final presentation on the effects of accent familiarity and accent thickness on employment desirability. So, an introduction into the reason why I decided to do this study and why I was interested in it is more of a personal experience. So, my parents are both Nigerian. I'm a Nigerian American. They're both full blown immigrants, 100% Nigerian Igbo, straight from Nigeria, born and raised. And growing up in an immigrant household, my parents would always say that I have three strikes. And it was that I was black, that I was a woman, and that I was foreign. And that these would be barriers when it came to me succeeding in life. And so, but my mom would always give this little caveat, and it was in Igbo, Dalu Chineke idi kagi ndi ocha. Basically meaning, thank God you sound like white people, or thank God you sound like Americans, because they viewed that us not having their accent was a benefit when it came to us going into the job market, even with all these strikes. So whenever I was talking to my other Nigerian friends about topics like this, they would say that a lot of times their parents didn't even teach them their language because they didn't want them to have an accent and make it a little tougher for them when it came to the job market because they viewed accents as a barrier. So it kind of really made me think about how many closed doors accents could have caused in people who are looking for their careers. So before I delved into this topic, I was very skeptical about the information that I would be finding on West African accents on employment desirability, just because West Africa or Africans in general are very overlooked when it comes to studies on immigrant populations. My actual results were that there was literally no information on West African accents and their effects when it comes to employment desirability, which was actually shocking. I thought there would at least be a little bit, but there was none. Most of the studies were focused on Hispanic and East Asian accents in this in this study style that I'm going towards, and its effects on employment desirability. And these studies revealed that it wasn't just accent types that had an effect, but also accent thickness. It showed that the more assimilated your accent was into American culture, the more likely you are to get a job. But the fact that they had no African accent studies done really showed a huge knowledge gap in a big portion of the immigrant population. The purpose of the study is to investigate a possible employer bias that could arise based on accent familiarity and accent thickness. The study specifically will focus on law firms because law is the one field that has the least amount of diversity, with 89% of the population being white. And the fact of that level of lack of diversity doesn't really reflect equally in the population of the pool of qualifiable lawyers and people in that field. They're way more diverse. So there could be a reason for that discrepancy could be based in accent bias. So the study is a cross-sectional study where law firms in Houston, Texas are taken to be used as participants. Houston, Texas was a city that I would choose because it has a very diverse population and one of the largest Nigerian communities. This was ensured that the participants would have had at least possible and a medium level of interactions with these different accent types that we are measuring. So the participant will be going through 17 candidates from 9 different accent types. 8 of those accent types are stratified, with one that's more assimilated into American culture and more that's more like a new, fresh immigrant. And the ninth accent type that will be tested is the standard American accent, and it's used as the control group. Throughout the interview, while the interview is being done, these participants fMRIs are going through that are tracking brain responses, specifically measuring levels of stress throughout the interview. The reason for this is that stress is the main predictor and indicator when it comes to this study in terms of job desirability and familiarity. The lower your levels of stress, the higher your levels of familiarity is, and the higher your levels are of employment desirability. At the end of the interview, though, the participants fill out a short questionnaire with 4 close-ended and 1 open-ended question about basically the prepared level of the candidate, the qualifications, the receptive and engagement of the candidate during the interview, and would they hire that candidate. The reason for this questionnaire is to kind of cover and conceal the real the real reason for the study and to decrease response bias within the participants. They are told that the study is about measuring employer stress levels during the hiring process and how that may affect their ultimate decisions. So after the study is done, all the participants are briefed on the real true nature of the study. So the discussion. The hypothesis basically has a premise of 2 different theories. The first one is that stress levels are indirectly correlated with familiarity, meaning, like I said earlier, the higher your stress level, the lower your familiarity. And the lower your stress levels, the higher the familiarity. So the more familiar that you are to me, the lower stress activity will happen in my brain, basically. The second theory is that, as directly looked at with other studies, was that familiarity is directly correlated with social desirability, which means the more familiar you are to me, the more socially desirable you will become, which translate into employment desirability. This also means that the lower the stress levels that you activate in my brain. These theories build the basic hypothesis that can be separated into 2 stages. The first is that accent familiarity is directly related to job desirability, and accent thickness is indirectly correlated. This means that the more familiar your accent is to me, the more desirable you are for the job that you're applying to me. But the thicker your accent, the less desirable you are as a job applicant. So based off this first vague hypothesis, we go deeper into making some claims, which are that West African accents are the least familiar, and so they will have the lowest levels of job desirability versus Western European accents, which are the most familiar and will have the highest levels of employment desirability. As well as this, it will be the thicker your accent is, the lower your employment desirability, and the more assimilated your accent is, the higher your job desirability. The significance of this study is that it's important to really make sure that there aren't barriers that are creating racial disparities in this country. And a possible barrier, if the hypothesis is confirmed, is directly proportion or disproportionately affects the immigrant population. So studies like this can help increase awareness of biases like this and can raise the level of cultural competence in the workforce. It can also decrease the wage gap that is seen whenever you eliminate a possible bias that can directly relate to the reason for that wage gap. So thank you for listening.